Andy this afternoon. Oh, no, you disappeared.
Oh.
He popped up and then disappeared again. A few technical issues. Oh, there we go. We can see you again, Ben. Welcome to the Select Committee. You have 10 minutes with us, so we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for that, Chair and Select Committee. In general, I support where I'm focusing, my submission just focused on the planning bill in general. I left the natural environment bill to more of my esteemed colleagues in Auckland and the Waikato to reference on. But mainly where I'm going with the planning bill, where it needs to be amended is, and I'll read out in my submission what was in clause 4, the purpose. And we know that the proposed act is to establish the framework around planning regulated development and the enjoyment of land that, and this is what I've added to, complements but must not inhibit what is known as the public welfare supreme practice. This is taken straight out of what is called the Japanese Land Use Law Act 1974, which also codifies the standardized zones, which Minister Bishop has said more than once in public he wishes to emulate. So my submission basically is fusing the two systems together, because without the public domain, your private domain, that's your private property rights, just simply doesn't exist. And that is because through this paradigm shift with public welfare supreme to kick it off, you don't have a collective utility that takes legal preference over individual preference. So basically that is reinforcing section 14 of the proposed bill, but it is also looking at how our cities and our rural areas evolve through time. It looks at bringing in natural resource preservation, so hard ecological limits to protect our soils, which the NPS HPL does a good job but needs strengthening on. But it also protects our primary industry, and that comes through the conflict between our rural sector and the urban sector when we have greenfield developments happening in our cities. We also look at a healthy cultural and living. Basically, it's a mandated towards well-being through the access of light, air, and nature. So whenever you hear medium and high density developments take off, this is often one of the big pushbacks. What I'm looking at is to codify this in the public domain so that while private property rights are there, it can't infringe on the public domain where that access is lost. And the most big one is balanced development. Basically, Japan follows what's called an infrastructure first or infrastructure led development. That is, all your infrastructure goes in, that's all 7 types top to bottom, goes in first before you can even rezone and before the private sector or the public sector, if it's public housing, can even develop. And from there, I'm also pushing for a return to, some of you might remember the old metropolitan urban limits. They were controversial, but they had a point in stopping that uncontrolled infrastructure deficit sprawl consuming our rural land, such as in Pukekohe, which is in constant conflict. At the same time, I was looking at density follows frequency, and this has cropped up in Auckland just recently with Plan Change 120. Basically, where you have public transport available, the density should be matching. For example, if it's rapid transit, so that's grade separated access like the Northern Busway or our railway lines, should be minimum of 6 stories to utilise the full capacity of the transit system. If it's a frequent bus route, so every 10 minutes, it should be at minimum every 3 stories. And that leaves the rest of your suburban area to manage along between 1 and 3 stories as the demand sees fit. That said, the bill does propose aspects around reverse sensitivity, but I've gone even further. Basically, if you're the agent of change, so if you wish to build a development next to a port, a railway station, or next to a farm, the agent of change must bear 100% of the cost of development. So the reverse sensitivity can't kick off. This is going to be codified in our legislation to stop these reverse sensitivity claims backing up the planners and council and backing up the Environment Court, constantly causing delays, frustration, and time. If this newcomer's principle is adamantly clear, that agent of change knows what is expected of them before engaging in it. And then finally, we've got rural stewardship, and also what I would like to see codified for our cities anyway is the 330-300 rule. And this is because, especially after the recent storms we've just had over the last 5 years, we must see 3 trees from every building. Urban canopy must be at 30%, forest canopy, and 300 meters from a park. This goes into the sponge city model. Finally, I did have one concern. When this came out for submissions, the standardized zones didn't come out with them. They're not due out to the end of the year per the ministry. This is a problem. That is because they should be coming out together to go through this process, because one is likely to find a fault in the other, and if so, we can fix it. By the time this legislation goes live at the end of the year, we can't correct it if the zones find the fault or vice versa. So that is where we are with the submission to the planning bill. I'll leave it to questions to the committee.
Thank you, Ben, for your submission. Look, we'll go first to Rachel Brooking.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for such a fulsome submission and all your beautiful diagrams as well. I've got 2 questions. So one is on this 330, 300. So you mentioned clause 11 in that well-functioning urban and rural areas.
Yes.
Is that where you see the hook for codification would be? And do you also think that it should be somewhere about the standardized zones? That's one question. And then the second one is, were you just telling us about Japan that the infrastructure has to be in the ground, as it were, before you can rezone? Correct. Okay, thanks. If you just expand slightly on both of those points.
Certainly. So the 330, 300 rule does, so if you're on page 152 of my submission, it does sit in clause 11, the goals, in part 1, but it also sits comprehensively in schedule 2 under part XX, the 3 governing protocols. And so that basically codifies it in, and thus your regional spatial plans and your land use plans would have to adhere to it to make sure it was carried out in parts 4 and 5 of the bill, which is consenting and enforcement.
Okay.
As for Japan's method, that is correct. They go infrastructure first, and once that is all in place, knowing that there is the 7 classes of infrastructure, then the rezoning occurs, and then development can happen. In New Zealand and Australia, in the West, we particularly do it the other way around, which is how you get issues such as public transport not in place for up to 30 to 40 years, and also how your physical infrastructure, which is your 3 waters, is also, you find out it runs out of capacity extremely quickly. You've got these very large upgrades, which can cost a small fortune to a council, no matter what size it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Look, we've got time for one last question from Lan, who has her hand up.
Tēnā koe, Ben. Thank you so much. And yeah, really appreciate the illustrations. That was super cool. Am I correct? Like, you know, you outline a lot in your submission, but would I be correct in kind of summarizing it that basically the government are attempting to do, say, like the Japanese model, except we've essentially totally dropped the ball in the environment part of that, and therefore the actually doesn't fit together? Do you want to reword what I'm saying?
Yeah, so basically, if the minister is true to his word that we are to emulate the system, there's basically 3 parts. You've got the private property side, okay, we've got in there. You've got the public domain side, which is absent, and then you've got the standardized zones, which we don't see until December. That third part is problematic for reasons I've just mentioned earlier, because if a fault shows up in that, because of the legislation, we can't correct it as easy. So yeah, so we've got part 1 set. We just don't have part 2, which is the public domain and the standardized zones available to us, which could cause problems when this all comes about in December.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben. And I echo my fellow colleagues in the very thorough submission, 172 pages that you've popped through with some lovely illustrations there as well. So we appreciate your time and your feedback.
So much thought.
Thank you,
yes, a lot of thought. Yeah. So thank you very much. It's really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Right. Moving on to our next